Is it going?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going.
Are you sure, Preston?
Yeah, it's going.
Hey.
Okay.
Alright, well, our prom question is, what is deforestation and how do we help solve it? So I
That's
guess
a big question.
Yeah.
There's many stakeholders in deforestation.
It's obviously a massive problem throughout
Yeah.
this whole world.
One of the benefits is it produces more plants and crops for the growing need for more food around the world.
So you're saying like why like people deforest?
Yeah, that and like
Deforest.
the need for paper materials and goods, and to plant other resources.
Yeah, and there's a lot of wood and like fancy wood that people want for their houses, like,
Yeah.
and they also kill all the animals.
Also helps increase the amount of agricultural prowess for the countries that not produce deforestation, but participate in the act of it. Like a lot of people in the South use it for harvesting soybean oil and stuff like that, and that's a huge thing around the world.
Yeah.
It really helps with agriculture. That's usually the main reason,
Yeah.
like because of deforestation. They use it to clear land and then just like for farming needs to help countries that are having problems with like
Yeah.
poverty.
And a
People-
lot of the
people rely on it too.
current policies now like aren't as strictly enforced. Like replanting trees. For every tree you cut down, you have to replant another one. However, like they don't replant it in the same area. Like when they use it, they'll like plant it in somewhere else where like it can't grow or flourish as much.
Yeah.
And all that land that was used could have covered more trees than the trees they're planting other places, because those trees will most likely not survive in those new areas.
Yeah, well, it's like a lot of work to like cover up the destruction they made, especially when they like rely on it for their lives.
And especially if you do slash and
that.
burn agriculture, it's hard to plant new trees when
Yeah.
the land has been like absolutely
Wait, what is that
destroyed.
again? They just destroy.
It's like they go through and they burn all the land.
Kind of like a scorched earth policy.
Yeah.
they literally.
But
burn
once
it.
you burn land, it's really hard to like grow trees back where it once was. Like let's say if you're driving through like South Carolina, you see like I know like when I'm driving there, like you see like dead trees and like the areas like the whole area is dead where they burned something.
Yeah.
Did
Then
you,
that's to ensure that the land like
And
won't
that might
grow
not even be
anymore.
for farming. That might be for like remember how we talked about before, like building society and remember like buildings, malls,
Yeah.
ways that we
Yeah.
as humans need to expand.
Did you like find any solutions like for the people that do it that way? Like, did you see any ways like we could recover the land that they like burnt? Like, I know with land they don't burn, like we can like have plantations and stuff and plant stuff back.
Well, do you guys know about the organization Greenpeace?
No, can you
No.
tell me a little more about that?
Yes. No, it's an organization developed to help activism in the United States and Canada. It was developed in 1971, and it works every day with like the 5 nations to help end deforestation and like help a healthy local environment and society.
Very nice. I also know companies such as L'Oreal take initiatives to switch to renewable resources in order to ensure that they can minimize the amount of deforestation that happens from pulp products or soy oil that they use inside of their hair products and stuff like that. I know that plays a big part because big organizations like that make a lot of money and they bring in a lot of resources. Takes up a lot of land.
So let's write down the stakeholders, and then when we have our proposed solutions,
We should like propose solutions
evaluate.
to each like
and we could evaluate how it affects each stakeholder.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first stakeholder we said was the local communities that need it for farming.
Yeah, for agricultural purposes.
So how we can solve that problem for
Yeah.
the people to do that?
I think that's a really hard one too because
It could also
Local-
it could benefit or harm.
Well, it's definitely gonna harm if we try to
Depending
like,
on
stop
if
it.
it's an outside company coming in and harvesting the land for their own production, or if it is the locals that are using that land for farming. So it'll benefit either side depending on who's.
Yeah, well, I mean, it'll benefit the world if we can like successfully stop it.
Most of the
'cause
time,
it's-
local communities have a backing from a bigger company that helps them go through with all those processes and makes it a little bit more difficult in legal terms to actually like intervene with it because it's not just them doing it. It's like a holistic group. So
To like stop them legally, like
So, like,
find a way to like,
back to what I was saying about bigger companies like L'Oreal, if we could put out more initiatives like that to get them to want to switch over to renewable resources.
yeah.
I know personally that hemp is a perfect replacement for pulp, and you can grow it way faster, and you can grow it in like bigger quantities in smaller areas.
Do you have
There's
to,
a need for like collaboration in the marketplace for like companies and local communities to really stand together and really fight against this issue.
So the first stakeholder we had was the local communities, and what was another one that would you think of?
Destruction of ecosystems.
The ecosystem.
Yeah.
And that just branches off.
wait, should
Like
we put this at
animals.
what he's doing? We just change it later.
Yeah. Well.
I mean, you can always send a picture on canvas.
Yeah.
Remember the other group did that?
Okay.
And the ecosystem.
That's a really tough one as well, but thankfully there's a lot more organizations and charities that contribute to that, such as the World Wildlife Foundation, for one. They start initiatives such as research projects where they can take kids, researchers, interns and stuff, where they can go out, plant trees, or just do activist like behaviors in such areas.
Right.
And I know that helps maybe not stop it, but it's a start to slow it down and increase the like
Let's write some of the solutions down that
Like
we're
the push for
proposing, so we
renewable.
can
Yeah, and then
like go through the
solutions right
solutions for each different like scenario, and like we can evaluate them at the
And
end.
then the first you said were like using alternatives
Yeah.
such as hemp,
Hemp.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one you stated was
For solutions.
like local communities,
Like with companies, is that what you mean?
companies and local communities going out and replanting and making
Like
sure
trying to renew the land pretty
Renew the
much.
land, yeah.
It's a big
So
one.
you could mention like green. Do you want the name of the companies that we said?
yeah.
Yeah.
So mine was Greenpeace.
Okay. And the other solution that I was that I found while researching was sanctions by the government
Yeah.
and
That's a good
sanctions and taxes. So what they would do is Peru, for example, they had over 180 to 200 acres of 200,000 acres of land being cut down every year, and their government imposed heavy sanctions and taxes on exporting like goods that use like soy oils, as you mentioned, or like those exotic woods that like
Yeah.
people use. So like
they don't even
stopped.
have to catch the people doing it, because like some of it, a lot of
Yeah.
it's done illegally, like
Yeah, a
logging
lot
and
of it.
stuff,
So like
but they just
they would
tax.
they tax the export of it, and they'd also tax like the import of
Oh, that's smart.
wooden products from other countries. And also what they did was they made it illegal to deforest without the government's approval.
Yeah.
So you couldn't just go like companies that from outside companies just couldn't come in and just cut down forests for their own use. And local communities would they would need I think they had like a really intricate process of like filing for deforestation, like for cutting down like certain areas. So it made it harder for people to just go out, or companies to just say, oh, we're gonna use this land to plant this and that.
Yeah.
And the results they saw was it went from about 200,000 to 150,000 the next year, and it's down to about 110 to 100,000 acres now that they're losing per year. So they cut down the rate of deforestation by 50% just using that method of the government actually like taking a part and enforcing it.
Actually, I want to go off that. Like, I found another logging solution. Yeah. Another logging
You were
solution.
out of it a little bit.
What was I gonna say? Oh, so like this guy on TED Talks, he proposed using old cell phones like to reduce illegal logging, because people would do it and you wouldn't be able to hear it happening, so you couldn't really stop it. And then he'd like put cell phones way up in the trees and use all their like signals from them to like tell like a park ranger or whatever far away to like come over and like just appear, and pretty much like the logging people they usually never see anyone when they're doing their business cutting illegally. So if they saw someone, they would just stop, and like he said, it worked when they did it one time. So with the sanctions, you could do the sanctions, and like if you did the cell phone things to stop loggers, that helps too.
There's also a
for
lot
the
of
logging part.
Yeah, there's a lot of private logging firms that also deforest illegally, which makes it substantially harder to actually like track them down.
Yeah, it's all
and,
like a lot of it's legal.
Yeah, record what types of damage they're actually doing. I read about this thing called ecoforestry, which is kind of like selective timber. So you go in, and instead of just going right away for every single tree that you see, you try and pick out the damaged and diseased ones so that you can harvest those first, and then it's not like super effective, but it helps at least reduce the amount of damage that is done because it's selective, so it's not going to go for everything. And that helps maybe reduce it from 50 trees in one day to maybe like 30, which is still step forward in the right direction.
And they might die anyway if they didn't cut them. So if you take them now, you could save a
instead
healthy
of
tree.
killing a very healthy one, like a sapling or something.
Branching off what everyone said, like I think a big problem is to end like corruption in all these like companies, like especially like you said in Peru and in Brazil.
Brazil, they've lost
problem.
about 70%.
Yeah,
like the government really isn't taking charge of like all the issues that are happening down there.
Well, like one of the main things is also that I think in Brazil I read it was they increased the fines for people caught deforesting by 800%.
Really?
Which like it did drastically decrease it when they were enforcing it, but now because of the structure of the government and how things are going with the economy
it's
and everything,
being poorly enforced.
Yeah, they're not like spending as much resources and time.
And then because of that, the companies are finding loopholes to go around. Like
and they're getting away with it because
they
they're
just
not
keep
gonna,
doing it illegally.
They're not going to spend their taxpayers' dollars for enforcing that. But like when they did enforce it, like having a fine that's 800% more than like it usually was, like now you're taking a bigger risk. So like companies are just like, is it really worth the profit if we get caught and get
use
fined?
The cell phone thing too, like that would definitely help.
And also, like I was reading before, like companies should start like introducing zero deforestation policies. That way, like it's a known thing around the world, like to conserve what we are losing.
Yeah, and a lot of that is we like as Joff said, alternatives.
Yeah, renewable resources is a huge one.
Yeah, because like if companies have alternatives to those products, they won't have such a high demand to cut down those trees for the trees or for other products that they want to grow there.
On top of what you said for the zero deforestation policy, I read that both Hershey and Disney implement that in most of their contracts with other organizations and firms to make sure that they themselves can have an impact in reducing. And I think that big companies doing something like that really speaks out globally because
that's a good example.
It does set a great precedent for what should be happening right now. And I think the influence that they have is also a great factor.
We could also like show other companies the destruction they're causing, and like if we really make all the companies like well known of what they're doing, like that'll probably help. Especially
they might not care. Also,
examples.
Yeah,
they might not.
Yeah, they're all secular. They really don't care about the future. I think they're all.
That's why I really think like laws should be like put in place.
Yeah.
Because just showing them like what they're doing wrong, they're gonna be like like actual like laws and policies. Like just showing them what they're like doing wrong. They're just gonna be like, okay, like we don't care. Because they're big, they just want to make money.
Because a lot of like the biodiversity that's being lost, like those are all like animals and plants that could
eventually that's going to affect us.
Yeah, because those are possible cures or.
Yeah, you never know when the next cure for cancer is going to be out there. It could be in this one plant that just went extinct because
they've just burned down the entire land, and it can't regrow. And then the animals and stuff like that just ruins the balance of the ecosystems. Not to mention the climate change from losing all those trees. So like we need to
increase carbon dioxide. Yeah.
So we really need to.
So we have to stop illegal and legal deforestation.
And that's why I think the plant. Remember how you were saying before, you plant one tree every time you cut down.
Yeah.
I think that actually is like a really good solution.
Yeah. The only thing I read
it's
that
a lengthy solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only bad thing about that is where they regrow the trees, because when they cut down all those trees to use that land for soybeans, they'll replant that tree somewhere else.
Yeah, they can't.
Yeah, and also
do
if
that.
you're building like a mall or like a community,
Well, they can use
can't-
plantations too. They can
Like
just
you
have
can't,
plantations of
replanting a
trees.
tree already where a forest exists isn't going to help.
So I guess a good solution to that would be the relocation of agricultural hotspots. Instead of using the rainforests to make way for those agricultural areas and those fields for all those resources, I think there should be more time spent allocating for different areas, ones that don't put so much at risk, as in the wildlife and the ecosystems there.
Yeah, but they also have like the most fertile land and will be the like fastest and
Yeah,
easiest to
so-
grow crops.
So like that's the thing though. You can't just not use that land considering all the
But
demand,
maybe we could
because of like the
try and
increase in
like figure
population.
out a way to like not just like finding more fertile land, but like actually making fertile land in places where it's not fertile.
Yeah, I'm
Ooh,
sure.
yeah,
that'd be cool.
I'm sure the
Yeah. Oh, that's a
allocation,
good idea.
you can add those two things together. Like if you find new land and then you make it fertile, it could easily replace the land that you're
Yeah.
already
Or
destroying.
like the junky old land that was once good. You can like
Exactly.
somehow make it good again.
Like there's
Almost.
definitely
I'm sure
ways to
there's-
do
yeah.
that.
But I know
Like
it's
a lot of
slash and
companies will
burn
look at that
agriculture,
and say-
it takes
It's
a
just
long
faster.
time.
It's just
Yeah.
faster to do it. Deforestation.
Yeah, like
but-
companies will look at it as like, oh, do we really want to like restore this land, or do you want to just cut down these trees and use that land? Like they're gonna take that easier alternative because
These companies
Unless
just
we
need
unless
they
we
need
make
more
it easy for them
morals.
to not do.
I think soon, they're gonna realize soon that they are running out of time and they're gonna run out of forests.
Yeah.
So hopefully.
like the Amazon is just 70% gone
That's like
Yeah.
so
in,
sad.
in Brazil.
It's
Yeah,
awful.
use
And-
really strict taxes.
And there's a lot of
on
like
them.
you like biodiversity that we lost, like thousands of species just gone just from that.
Yeah, it's like 1,000 species every day or something, or
Yeah.
270 or something. It's something crazy.
Yeah.
They're
Something
gone.
you never actually think of as
Yeah.
a number.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and they all have like their own special like abilities and elements that they contribute to the ecosystem.
Yeah. Should we like evaluate all of our solutions? Do you think?
Yeah,
Like,
so
Because
if
we
have-
listed them out.
Yeah.
Okay, so
we can like
renewal, government sanctions, monitoring forests.
Wait, write down the like making bad land good again.
like allocation
Yeah.
of land
Or like
and enrichment of land as well.
yeah, that's a good one.
Restore and enrich.
And enforcing like legal slash
illegal deforestation.
Like
I think the most viable solution that there is present is renewable resources, personally, because there's so many different things that you can use other than those woods, and there's so many better ways to go about it, because you don't always need to use just soy. Like, sure, some plants might have like a certain essential oil that you use, but more times than not, there's another plant that you could use just as well.
This is recording our voice, right?
Yeah.
How do we know?
The little microphone thing on the bottom of that shows.
Yeah.
I didn't
Oh,
know
like
we turned
how-
it on. I just got really nervous for a second.
Like
Yeah,
how
no.
like hard you're talking, just it
Yeah.
moves.
Hi. Alright.
Okay.
So yeah, how do you guys feel about renewable resources? Do you think it's like one of the better ones?
I think it's one of the
worst
better ones, along with land renewal. I think those are the two.
Land.
I think
Main-
maybe one of the downsides about renewable resources is that companies have to take that leap to actually start.
Yeah, it's gonna be expensive
Start it?
to
Yeah.
actually get there.
The startup
and they
of
might
it
not
is
want to.
probably
Yeah.
one the biggest.
It's gonna be an investment.
obstacle for it.
but
It might be worth it if we
it-
impose really strict taxes
have
and
probably
tariffs
one
and
of the-
stuff.
Yeah, one of the best payoffs.
But then it
there
might
is.
slow down production a
It
lot.
could. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing though. Like when you stopping production, like there's such a high need and demand
Exactly.
for like all those like goods and food, and like a lot of the world is still starving. So like they're like
Yeah.
really like
But
trying
no
to produce
solution's
as
gonna
much.
be perfect. Like every single one's gonna
It's
be.
gotta start slow somewhere. Like,
Exactly.
It'll
It's
adjust
gonna
and stuff.
yeah, but
government sanctions. I think the government sanctions is good for like
yeah.
The,
For company-
the legal deforestation
Yeah.
for the really big companies.
But
Like-
the only flaw in that is that you have to have an established government that can actually enforce it. You
Yeah.
know, Like,
That might be hard to do.
Yeah.
Which in Brazil they don't really
Yeah.
have right now.
Or in like Peru.
Yeah. Well, Peru's like is actually working.
Oh, go
They
Peru.
said. Yeah. But Brazil's is just like with all the crime and
No,
economic.
yeah, Brazil's the bad one.
Yeah, they don't have the resources to enforce that. But the fines and taxes on import and export goods.
Yeah, I think
Like,
that'd
I
be
know-
the best way to do
Yeah,
that.
like I know, like if you think about like all the major companies, if like all the consumer companies, I mean countries like the United States, China, and all the world powers, if they like started imposing sanctions on importing like goods used by soy oils or exotic woods or like just tree products that are from the Amazon or from rainforests, like that would drastically decrease.
And we could use the money that you get from taxing all that to like go back
Yeah.
into the rainforest to
Yeah,
like
there's a huge need for collaboration in the marketplace.
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's not helping that our current president is like not about
Yeah.
any of that.
Any relations?
I just
Yeah.
remember another solution that's actually really big: recycling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Recycling's huge.
Like
Reusing
the average person just recycling.
reusing
Yeah,
paper
that's
products by recycling them. That's huge.
I feel like the best solution, when looking at all these, is like a combination of a whole bunch of them.
yeah.
Like
So let's-
recycling for
Well,
the
I
average.
think they all go hand in hand.
Yeah,
Well, they all play a part in
Yeah, but
actually
you gotta, like,
reducing
combine
it.
it.
yeah.
It's not
You have
just
to,
one.
yeah. Like I think like you'd have to combine like government sanctions with
With
like
land
recycling.
renewal. I think with land renewal, yeah.
and
Land
use-
renewal for
and,
sure.
Like, I think we could use all these, like because it's not like all these solutions are like you have to use this solution or this solution. Like these two
There's
solutions
not
can't
just
work
one
together.
main
Yeah.
one that's going to make the most difference.
Yeah, they're all collaborative
Yeah.
solutions. And then
I agree.
okay, so let's talk
So-
about the hemp or renewable resources.
No, we just did that. Remember? Just
Yeah. Oh no, I like now like comparing it like to the stakeholders.
okay.
Like how it would benefit.
like local communities.
Yeah. So local communities, it wouldn't hurt
I feel like they just wouldn't be on board as much
Yeah.
because
Honestly.
they use that.
because
like,
they would
the
still
soy.
have to do the startup as well. And like
It'd be
if
hard
it's
for
a
them,
local
like, they survive
community,
on that
they
stuff.
probably don't have the finances for that as like a small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like
Fly.
it's the small villages and stuff inside
That use
Brazil
it,
that
yeah, for
keep
food.
keep pushing further and
I
further
think, like-
inside of the forest.
I think like that, like local communities, like using it for crops and food
Mm.
and stuff like that. Like that's that's something that we can.
That's
have.
their own self sustainability
Yeah,
right
that's
there.
yeah. Like if it's feeding them, but like when it's other companies coming in and using that land for profit around the world, like that's I think
Yeah.
where you draw the line.
They're a little more delicate to deal with.
Yeah,
They have a little bit more on the line.
and then obviously for the ecosystem, like both plants and animals, like using renewable or alternative
It's
resources.
very
would-
helpful.
Yeah,
Extremely helpful for them.
it preserves plant life, plant diversity, and also animal life.
And I think
And-
And the climate and like everything, pretty much.
And we like the more trees we have, the cleaner air we have. The
and think about it, if we're still using plant-based products, that means we're growing more plant-based products, which ties into replanting other things. Whether it may not be in the same area,
yeah.
it's still helping the
And that's
environment.
land
and that ties in with this because
Yeah.
for like hemp and other like alternative resources, we're gonna need land and places to grow that in.
Yeah.
Plantations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like
Yeah,
land.
that's a big thing.
Let's
land
talk about
renewal.
like land renewal now. Like
Like the enrichment of land.
yeah, the enrichment. So like there's
Like
a lot of
old
places.
devastated land,
Mhm.
like stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Alright.
Like if you think about like just in the United States or like any country, like think of how many abandoned buildings or
Yeah.
things there are like in the middle, either in the middle of nowhere or just in cities and stuff. Like if it's in a good location, you could just take all that rubble out.
Right.
Or there's another thing that I saw is like when I was in Boston, like a lot of the places there would use the roofs as farms, and like I know
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
yeah,
Green roofs and
like
stuff
I know
like that.
yeah, like green
What is
roofs.
it called?
Green roofs.
Like they grow their own
grow
vegetables.
gardens
made
on
of-
the roofs.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
roof is a literal garden, like made of soil and stuff like that.
Like
Yeah.
what they did like in the what was it? Remember like the early settlers when they were like in the Midwest, they made the roofs like out of like the dirt.
Oh, that
Yeah.
was kind of different though, except that was used to be made into clay,
Yeah,
hardened.
yeah.
Right.
You're like actually growing crops
Yeah.
on top of your house.
Like
saying
I know
people
like
should
the
do that?
Red
That's so
yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
like the Red Sox
It's very
stadium, like
interesting.
they get all like their roof is so big at the stadium that they produce all the plants that they need for stadium consumption.
But that's
So that-
that's so small compared to what the
Yeah.
rainforest provides now. Like you really have to make that on a large scale.
Yeah, but I mean, if more companies and like more restaurants and everything, that would like reduce the need for importing or using that land for those crops. Because if you could grow tomatoes on your roof, why are you going to waste good farmland out in the middle of nowhere to produce all those tomatoes? Like you could be using
And
that land
you could like
for.
with the government
Yeah, but you
sanction.
can only grow how many tomatoes on your roof?
Yeah, I
compared to,
know.
like,
But I
That's why
mean-
it'd be hard.
But I mean, if you
giant,
think about it,
farm.
just if one stadium isn't buying any plants or anything, like that's a huge amount. Like that's a lot of plants and stuff that they're not buying. That's a lot of like demand that they're not taking out from the farms. And if more companies like throughout cities and everything started doing that, it
You
would
could like reward
drastically-
them too with
yeah.
the government sanctions. Like you tax the people that are using
over
original
time-
land really hard.
If like almost like everyone starts doing that, I think it'll
Yeah.
be a big impact.
'Cause what
But
else
I feel like
do-
one
But you have to give
stadium,
them
What else-
incentive to do it. Like
I
why would
know,
they want
yeah.
to do that?
like most restaurants, like their roofs or something. Like what else are you using it for?
that would be smart actually if restaurants used their roofs to
I don't
make
think-
crops.
I still think it'd
I
be
don't
too
think
small.
restaurants
though.
are like coming into the areas that are being deforested.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
And what would happen
I think it's a
during,
lot
No,
of
but I
wood
mean, like,
and exotic-
even if it's
Wintertime.
not in the areas of deforesting, like, it still frees up a lot of, like, land
It would help.
and farms
definitely
that they're buying from,
But
like, to grow other
the
plants.
point of like the deforestation in the local communities is that they're destroying that land specifically for their purpose there. If they're not gonna buy the crops from the TGI Fridays up
Yeah.
there.
No, what I'm saying is, like,
like
instead of, like,
that's the hard part.
yeah,
Is like
instead of using, like, those farms, though, to, like, that are producing those tomatoes or cucumbers or whatever
Right.
fruit, like, they could use that land for, like, the alternative resources, like hemp or, like, other products that they could use to stop importing other goods for deforestation.
I think the biggest problem that stems from all of these solutions is money.
Yeah,
And I think that's
that's the
one of
biggest.
the biggest things. Yeah, exactly.
The biggest
thing.
roadblock.
Well, it's like almost all
Definitely.
money.
And
like,
but what
It's-
could be a
it's
possible
time,
solution to
time,
helping?
money, and resources.
Like
yeah.
there needs to be more charities and organizations that provide bigger services, but then again, right there, that costs money as well.
I think it just starts with people making like the sacrifice. Like okay,
Right.
like it's
And
the
you can-
world. Like it's money.
No,
you
it's-
can tie
no
that
one's gonna
into
do
the
that.
government
I know
sanctions
no one's
as
gonna
well.
do it, but like
Like, like
It's
the
a revenue
government
I guess
fire.
if you get people
Yeah.
to see it, they might try.
You could do taxes, but
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The money ties into
But-
government sanctions, so
like the
Yeah.
fine,
bigger
like
sanctions
the fines
hopefully
and
gets
yeah,
more
but
money
you
for
really
more
think
support.
people like are really gonna like not protest that?
But I mean, if you think the
Wait, what do you
government,
mean?
Like people are gonna get so mad if
Yeah,
like
they don't
you're
want more
paying more and more
taxes.
taxes just to conserve a forest.
Some people
when, like,
don't care.
They think it's fine.
and then it turns into a moral dilemma.
Like think
as
about it.
well.
Like
yeah,
some
I
people like
guess,
are gonna be
yeah.
like, look, we have trees now, we're fine. Like everything's fine. Why
Yeah.
am I paying money to conserve a forest in Brazil when I'm not living in Brazil?
and then that's why
Oh,
we
man,
could
it's a sacrifice.
those companies could put
But
out
we get
educative
that.
but those
But if
companies could put out educative programs that
yeah,
lets them know what is actually happening, puts on the people on the gravity of the whole entire situation and where it's
Yeah.
actually going. And that might be able to sway a few people, but sometimes that might be all you
Yeah.
need for the majority vote.
I mean, education and knowledge of
It's
like
half
a lot.
of the battle.
yeah. Because there's so many companies and organizations that will just support whatever company just for their own personal gain.
Mhm.
But they really don't understand like the gravity of like
Yeah.
how bad like deforestation is.
And that's why you could tie those things together. You could tie the what were you just saying?
I forget.
Well,
We talking government sanctions. That's right.
Yeah,
Talking about
could
taxes,
take-
and
yeah.
educating
You can,
everyone.
right. So you could tie the whole entire system of organizations getting volunteers out, but also at the same time there could be a subsection of that organization that is dedicated just to educating the people about it, and then and a different part
that's
of
a
that
lot of money
government,
that they
could
they-
be doing the taxes and the sanctions at the same
from like
time.
from the
So,
fines,
like stemming out in different directions.
like from the fines of deforesting like that they had in Brazil and other countries in Central America,
Mhm.
like those fines or like the import taxes or export taxes, like all that money could go back into like they could start an organization
Go back into
or,
educating people.
yeah,
Or,
either
like, the
educating people
renewal,
or
like-
like renewing land or
Or they
even
could split it 75, 25. 25% goes into letting people know what's actually going on.
Yeah.
And 75 goes into monitoring and decreasing the amount
Yeah,
of
like all that money you
peril
make from
done.
stopping it, you could put back. You could invest that money back into helping the cause. Well, like by like maybe like a lot of governments, they give tax reliefs or they give grants to charity organizations. Like you could take that money and really put that back into the rainforest, or like the whole deforestation cause.
Right. So I'd say that the solution selection, methodical selection process. Was that number 8
Yeah.
of the?
I forget what number it
number
was,
7
but
or 8.
we gotta look at all the different like types
Yeah.
that we want to solve.
It
Like,
seems like that
economic.
now
need-
with money as a giant factor, as a limiting factor for us, we've decided that if you can put together organizations along with government sanctions and recycling as a loose term for land renewal and renewable resources, because they all go hand in
Yeah.
hand, you could actually have an effective solution if the government was on board
Yeah.
and the charity organizations were on board.
Which they maybe would be if you.
I'm
tell them
sure
about
I'm
it.
sure the
I think-
organizations
yeah.
would be on board.
So,
So
like,
It'd be hard
they
to
were
do.
they were built for that. They were
I think that
founded
would be
for that purpose.
yeah. Even if it's hard to do that, I feel like that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
So like, or like,
So like a combination of like financial, like taxes, tariffs, that
Mhm.
stuff,
So educating the people.
educating,
Yes.
and then just like land renewal or
collaboration. Right.
recycling,
solution.
recycling land and
Mhm.
materials.
Okay, so
A collaborative solution that includes the education of communities along with a slight increase in government revenue for taxes and fines upon the destruction upon allegations against forests.
So we agreed. We have to educate communities.
Yeah.
Renewal of goods and land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Goods.
So recycling.
So recycling land and goods. So people like everyday people's like the goods kind of like we all
That's
recycle
spelled
and
recycling, right?
Yeah, you spelled
That's
it right.
right.
Yeah, recycling.
and then
And
just
then-
like the economic part almost like
Right, the
Government
government's involvement in
sanctions
it. It
and
doesn't. The
taxes.
government doesn't even have to come in hard hitting either, like knocking at your door, like give me this
Yeah.
much more money. Like
just
it
all
can be
big
something
companies.
It can be something like a 5-year process that eases into it. But even those 5 years, if you can make a big step forward, then
Yeah.
that means the years after that can be
I mean,
even
it's
bigger.
proven to work. Like Peru's like they've decreased the deforestation
Yeah.
by 50% just from their sanctions and
Right.
taxing
yeah,
Mhm.
and fines.
which can all like go back into educated communities. It's like just
Exactly.
like one giant loop.
Like a feedback loop. Yeah.
Mm. No, that's exactly what it is.
Beautiful key
No, it
term.
is.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Catch that key term.
Government sanctions and fines and what else?
That sounds like a pretty good solution right there.
I mean, I think that's.
I don't know. Is there
Like
another
this
thing?
goes
Do you have
government
anything in the
sanctions.
back of your head that you feel like stands out to you?
I
See,
say,
what else did we
I feel like
talk
that's
about?
the main three collab
Yeah.
solutions.
They're pretty
but-
big ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
Yeah. They all work together.
Very nice.
Yeah. They're like, well,
Because
yeah.
these all feed off of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright.
And then, well, the thing we said was like the governments actually have to like play a part. Like, yeah,
They
you
do.
can't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like that's like one of the biggest things that I saw. Like if you looked at
We have to play a part, the government, pretty
Yeah.
much everyone.
because like
in this.
look at the difference between Peru
Naturally, yeah.
and Colombia, or not Colombia, Peru and Brazil. Brazil's government stopped enforcing strict laws, and now like their deforestation rate is the highest it's ever been.
Yeah.
Given
Peru's
Brazil's
been on
government's
it.
also in shambles right now.
Yeah,
Which
That's but I
doesn't
mean
help.
Peru's government's been on top of it,
Yeah.
and they've decreased it by 50%.
So we just need to make
So
sure
it's all
Brazil's
about-
government.
Yeah, so like the government plays a big
It's on
part
top.
in it.
Yeah.
Alright.
How do you guys
be
feel
good.
about this?
Yeah. I
Feel
feel
good?
good
Yeah, I
about
feel
the
good.
solution.
Yeah, I feel good.
And then we'll take a picture of it and we'll.
Yeah, we could just drop it in the Dropbox with the video.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Alright, should we stop this?
Thank
Or just click this?